Welcome to part 2 of the discussion on module number 4, the accounting for disbursements and receipts of the government. So, kanina ay nag-end tayo doon sa proper accounting treatment. Then, we will be starting with yung IIUEEU expenditures classification in government. This serves as a guide in identifying mga transactions that are leaning to disallowances or charges in the government. So ano ang sinasabi dito? Okay, the prevention of illegal, irregular, unnecessary, excessive, or extravagant or unconscionable expenditure. So unahin natin tong illegal or uh, irregular expenditures. So ano ba itong mga ganitong klaseng expenditure? So normally itong illegal, irregular, itong IIUEEU expenditures na to, these are not allowed in the government. So ini-specify nila yung mga items na uh, are not allowed to be incurred in the government. So illegal expenditures are the expenditures which are contrary to law. So madali naman siyang maintindihan. Irregular expenditures are expenditures incurred without adhering to established rules and regulations, procedural guidelines, policies, principles, or practices that have gained recognition in law. So anything that is in contrary with the specific provision of a law, kung anumang batas ang tinutukoy niyan, this is considered as illegal expenditure. So, sabi dyan, without conforming to prescribed usages and rules of discipline, conducted in a manner that deviates or departs from which does not comply with standards set or is deemed irregular, an anomalous transaction which fails to follow or violates appropriate or necessary rules of procedure is likewise irregular. So, mas madali mo maintindihan kapag nag-cite tayo ng example. 1. Payment of claims under a contract awarded not strictly in accordance with the prescribed modes of procurement of supplies, materials, and equipment. Under a contract awarded not strictly in accordance with prescribed rules of procurement of supplies, materials, and equipment. So in government accounting kasi, the general mayroong government procurement law kasi in government procurement law. As I have read the kanina before I start recording this video, yung there is a proposal na on October 2022 CPA board exam ay i-include itong government procurement law sa inyong RFBT o yung regulatory framework for business transactions, yung itong business law. Itong procurement law ay hindi under the government procurement law, ang sinasabi dyan ay merong mga modes of procurement ang bawat government agencies. For example, bibili ka ng mga supplies, pwede ba ang small value procurement o kaya kapag nagko-construct ka ng building, dapat public bidding yan. Ganon. So, bawat mode of procurement ay merong requirements na ini-implement. So, ang sinasabi lang dito, if a particular, for example, for a particular transaction is for public bidding, pero hindi mo siya ginawa on public bidding, under the prescribed mode of procurement, that is illegal because you are violating the government procurement law. Itong government procurement law, nakita ko, it was introduced by the BOA to be included in the RFBT. So, more or less, mapag-aaralan mo ito when you will be reaching the October 22 CPA board exam. Next, the purchase of items from jobbers or middlemen in violation of a government policy to acquire the same directly from reputable manufacturers or their duly licensed distributor. Because the rule is, dapat sa mga reputable manufacturer lang nakikipag-contract ang government. So, hindi pwede yung mga jobbers or middlemen lang. So, yun ang sinasabi dyan. That is illegal and irregular. Next, payment of allowances and other forms of additional compensation without proper authority. So, ang sinasabi lang dito, Di ba kanina sinasabi na yung allowances for government officials, hindi yan po pwede. Yung mga honoraria and allowances. So that would be illegal kung bibigyan mo ng allowances, honoraria ang mga government officials when they are not included in the exceptions. Payment of repair of government property undertaken by shop, mechanics, or contractors not duly accredited in accordance with an existing government policy. Payment of repair or of government property undertaken by shop, mechanics, or contractors not duly accredited in accordance with existing government policies. For example, yung mga nagme-mekaniko on yung mga nasa highway na they are not really registered or accredited. Dapat hindi doon pinapa-repair ang mga government motor vehicles or equipments. Simply because ang tinitingnan kasi natin dito is yung efficiency ng transaction. Baka magbabayad ka ng ganitong halaga pero the quality of the work naman ay hindi natin assure because they are not accredited. So yun ang sinasabi under this item. Payment for emergency purchase when there is no emergency as defined. Normally, nangyayari in the government is they create an emergency on themselves. Bakit? Ang dinidefine ng GAA on emergency is that which involves the loss, danger, or life and/or property that will cause detriment to the public service. So minsan nagki-create ng payment for a particular transaction, sinasabing emergency when it is not. Nung klaseng mga emergency yan, it should be involving the loss or danger to life and/or the property. For example, bibili ka ng bibili ng service or isang motor vehicle. Tapos ang reason on the certification of public purpose ay kailangan ito dahil kailangang ihatid yung mga because of the increasing expenses on traveling ay bumili na lang ng ganitong klaseng vehicle. Is that really an emergency? Does it involve the loss or danger to the life and the property which will cause detriment to the public service? When you analyze and carefully evaluate, it is not. So that would be illegal. That would be tantamount to illegal expenditures. Reimbursement of expenses incurred by persons other than authorized by representatives of a government agency. Payment of salaries under a labor payroll to persons other than the payees unless properly authorized. Payments made on the basis of split requisition, purchase orders, vouchers, the use of government motor vehicle na wala namang for official use only. So these are samples of illegal expenditures for your, I think madali namang maintindihan yung mga items. So you have to read it. I would like to emphasize itong split requisition. Asan na ba yan? Payments made on the basis of split requisitions, purchase orders, vouchers, or checks unless approved by proper authority of the agency. Anong sinasabi dito? Under the government accounting kasi, merong threshold. If I remember it right, parang 15,000 or 10,000. So, merong threshold na sinasabi dyan na dapat kapag lumampas at a particular threshold ay dapat ibang mode of procurement na ang gagamitin mo. So hindi na pwede itong ganitong klaseng mode of procurement. So ang ginagawa ng iba ay ini-split yung requisition. For example, ang bibilin is worth 30,000. So ang gagawin, pupunta sa isang store para mabili yung 15,000 dun sa isa, then pupunta sa ibang store, 15,000. Pero kung titingnan mo, this is the same date. At kung i-analyze mo, parehas naman na pwede silang bilhin sa iisang store lang at sa iisang resibo lang dapat siya. So, etong mga ginagawang splitting of the requisitions ay illegal. So, yun lang siya. Merong threshold na ina-identify ang Commission on Audit on the purchase of particular transaction. So, hindi pwedeng i-split mo yan to be able to circumvent the law. Next, the unnecessary expenditures. Ito yung mga expenditures which could not pass the test of prudence, yung conservatism, or the required diligence of a good father of a family, thereby not responsive to the exigencies of the service. As the term imply, it is not necessary. Tingnan natin yung example. Grant of overtime pay work that is not urgent in nature as to require completion with a specified time. Nag-grant ka ng overtime work, pero kung titingnan mo naman yung overtime, yung ino-overtime na trabaho ay can be accomplished within the normal or the regular hours of the work. Next, expenses for advertisements or anniversaries in newspapers na hindi naman necessary unless ikaw ay nasa tourism or tourism, Department of Tourism or other related agencies. Use of aircon when not needed, use of table lamps while working in the office where the room is adequately illuminated. Nag-purchase pa ng mga table lamps when in actual, kung titingnan mo naman yung conditions ng office ay they are properly illuminated at kumbaga baka mamaya glass pa yung wall, tapos bumili pa ng mga table lamps. So that tandamounts to unnecessary expenditures. Next, excessive expenditures. These are unreasonable expenses or the expenses that incurred at an immoderate quantity or exorbitant price. So, kaya siya excessive, di ba? When we say excessive, sobra naman. Hindi moderate, di ba? Dapat the purchase should be in moderation at kung maaari ay kung ilang items lang ang gagamitin ay yun lang sana ang bilhin. At yung price should be at a regular or yung normal values. So, sinasabi dito, the term excessive relates to price and the volume. Yun nga yung sinasabi ko kanina. So, let's look at the example. For example, itong payment for repair of government equipment at a cost exceeding 30% of the current market price of the same or similar equipment. So, what is the rule in government accounting kapag ganito? 30 yung ibabayad mong expenses ay 30% naman pala ng current market price. So, the suggestion is kung ganyan ang repairs ng isang equipment, bumili ka na lang ng bagong equipment if the cost is exceeding 13%. So, yan. Next, expenditures for supply and materials in quantities beyond the required needed by the agency for a determinable period. Okay. So, na-overstock yung mga inventories. So, when you are thinking of whether the price is excessive, you have to consider the supply and demand forces, the government price quotations, the warranty of the products, and the brand of the products. Let's go with the extravagant expenditures. Those incurred without restraint, judiciousness, and economy. They exceed the bounds of propriety. These expenditures are immoderate, prodigal, lavish, luxurious, wasteful, grossly excessive, and injudicious. So, very strong yung mga ginamit na adjectives dyan. So, let's look at the examples. Purchase, basta yung mga excessive and luxurious, this relates to extravagant expenditures. Pansinin mo, the purchase of luxurious and expensive office furnishings for office buildings. For example, carpet, wall decor, draperies, utensils, desks, chairs, lamps. However, mayroong exception dun sa mga dignitaries, mga Office of the President, Justices, Intermediate Appellate Court, or yung mga heads and members of constitutional commissions, department secretaries, governors, mayors, bureau directors, and other equivalent in government, corporations, and other agencies as warranted by their resources. So, it will depend on the availability pa rin of their resources. Luxurious furnishings on government buildings. Except lang kung ikaw ay nasa DTI o kaya Department of Tourism, which involves in the promotion of arts and culture. Baka halimbawa, yung head of the agency ay bumili pa siya ng Leonardo da Vinci painting, mga tipong ganon. Those are extravagant expenditures which are not necessary to be used, to be expended using the government funds. Itong mga expensive cars, mga BMW pa, mga ganyan. Well, actually, the the procurement service in the Philippines, meron silang mga in-specify na mga brands for the motor vehicles na hindi pwedeng bilhin ng ating mga government agencies. So I think you just have to read the items, sinite kong examples dito for you to understand yung concept ng extravagant expenditures. So let's go with unconscionable expenditures. From the word, ang key term sa unconscionable expenditures is conscience. Ang sabi dito, those incurred without knowledge or sense of what is right, reasonable, and just, and not guided or restrained by conscience. A moderate expense which no man in his right sense would make, nor a fair, honest man would accept as reasonable. So, walang sinite na example, ang training handbook on government expenditures related to unconscionable expenditures because normally, ang mga nangyayari on the actual practice ay hindi pa naman siya umaabot on the unconscionable expenditures. So, hindi pa nila na-cite dahil normally dito na nagfo-fall yung extremes on the extravagant expenditures. But if you will analyze tong unconscionable expenditures, these are expenditures na you cannot imagine that it can be purchased. I would like to cite siguro dito yung sa if you will remember yung construction ng bridge sa I don't remember if it is in La Union, yung nag-construct ng bridge na hindi naman dapat may bridge. Well, that may be unnecessary but that is unconscionable. Ang sinasabi dito, 'di ba? A man in his right sense would make, nor a fair honest man would accept as reasonable. Nag-construct ka ng bridge, ng tulay sa isang patag na daan. Or, 'di ba, the reason the creation of a bridge is to connect to maybe two islands or two locations. Kumbaga two valleys. Kumbaga kino-connect mo yung one valley, kumbaga dalawang location na gusto mong i-connect because of to be able to have a more efficient transportation or traffic. Pero if I could remember, I can classify it as unconscionable expenditure. Yung the construction of a bridge na wala namang dapat i-construct na bridge. Yung dapat normal highway lang, pero bakit tinayuan ng bridge? Ganun. So that would be the unconscionable expenditures. Okay, let's go with limitation expenditure. I think itong limitations of the expenditures, this is just a reiteration of yung mga general provisions. Mapapansin mo yung international commitment, yung government securities, yung supplies, emergency purchase. Okay. These are just reiteration of the items na in-enumerate natin. Okay, let us emphasize this, yung number 9. Certificate of availability of funds from the chief accountant shall be required before entering into contracts involving government funds. So before mag-enter into contracts, dapat na-certify ng accountant na may pondo yung contract na ina-undertake na yon. This is a safe security also on the supplier kasi the contract which involves a certification on the availability of funds binds the government to be able to honor the contract in times of insufficiencies in the budget. So once na nakapag-contract ka na yung chief accountant, the government, you have to implement the contract. Augmentation of an item within MOE from savings and other MOE may be allowed but not to exceed 1/3 of the appropriated amount to be augmented. So, anong sinasabi lang dito? For example, you classify an expense as MOOE, yung maintenance and other operating expenses, tapos may savings on the MOE. Sabi dyan, under the general provisions ay, pwede mo daw yang i-augment o i-appropriate dun sa ibang items within MOOE as long as it does not exceed 1/3 of the total appropriated amount. ng MOOE na yon. So, yun siya. So, I think I will still be ending the discussion on Module 4 dahil medyo mahaba pa yung susunod yung modes of disbursement. So, after this, doon tayo sa part 3. So, I think that ends the discussion. Thank you.